This man discovers a secret structure on the floors of the ocean, but when he swims deep within, he screams. When he reached the bottom of the structure, he saw chairs and tables arranged in the most peculiar way he had ever seen. He had expected something akin to the lost city of Atlantis, but what lay before him was far different from his expectations. Just as he absorbed the astonishing sight, he noticed something sitting on a table that changed everything into an unexpected event. David Levy resided in Israel, and his father served in the Israeli Navy, a branch of the Israel Defense Force, which meant they were always close to the ocean. This proximity fueled David's fascination with the sea and man-made objects that found their way into its depths. At the age of 16, his parents agreed to finance diving lessons, unknowingly setting in motion a series of events that would lead David to a significant discovery. David was overjoyed at the idea of obtaining a diving license. He worked hard and learned rapidly after months of lessons. His focus moved once again. He now desired to obtain his open water permit, which would allow him to drive freely in the water. He knew he'd have to improve before he could qualify, but his aspirations of discovering riches kept him going, and one day he'd find something that would make it all worthwhile. David finally got the guts to test for his certificate after a year of practice, classes, and rigorous training. Soon, he finished up the course, took off his scuba gear, and walked out of the school with a certification. David couldn't wait to explore the entire ocean on his own for the first time. He'd be able to see wrecks and sunken treasure. Despite the fact that David had dived several times previously, he had never dived on his own. He always had instructors with him to ensure his safety. But he'd be fully on his own now. That Saturday morning, he dressed in his wetsuit and borrowed a small boat from one of his buddies. He launched the boat off the coast of his country and sailed away from the land. David donned his dive gear and tanks, took a deep breath, and counted to 3 before plunging out into the water. The water was perfectly clear at the surface, but as he descended deeper, it became murkier. David's pulse rate increased as he continued sinking. He realized he was totally alone, and if something went wrong, no one would ever find him. After 15 minutes of diving, David began to recall the diving school horror stories that his classmates had told him in an attempt to get under his skin. He was aware that they were all false, but it didn't help when he was alone in the sea. He'd heard rumors about everything from man-eating sharks to aliens, but he soldiered on until he spotted something that may very well have been extraterrestrial. David noticed the blackness of the water giving way to something on the ocean floor. He noticed windows that had somehow held up against the pressure and resembled some form of structure. He needed to do more research, so he swam closer to the structure. Because it was difficult to see through the window, he had to seek a way in. He noticed a bridge running up to the surface and realized it was his route in. He swam back to the surface and noticed a portion of the structure protruding from the water. He saw his way in, going back through it to the inside of the bridge. But there was one thing he didn't expect: it was fully dry and sealed on the inside. He didn't actually need any of his equipment, but the true discovery came when he walked down into the main part of the building and sat on the ocean floor. When he arrived at the bottom of the building, he couldn't believe what he saw: seats and tables with the strangest decorations he'd ever seen. He anticipated seeing something resembling the lost metropolis of Atlantis, but what he saw was much different. Just as he was digesting his recent discoveries, he noticed something on a table that would alter everything. It was suddenly evident what he was standing in. He noticed something on the iPad that explained everything: a menu of reasonably priced seafood and beverages. The menu appeared to be well preserved given how long the establishment must have been closed. He picked it up and examined it more closely, smiling to himself. He never heard of the restaurant before, and it was clear that it had closed down decades ago. David was pleased with his discovery. Even if it wasn't a historic structure, he enjoyed the journey. Plus, he'd be able to bring back a souvenir treasure: the menu.
Subscribe for more content like this. And don't forget to hit the bell button so you can be updated right away for new uploads.